Hi, I'm Julie Webb. Thank you so much for your purchase of Caps for Sale and for being a loyal listener to LitCentric Radio. So for today's lesson, I'm going to share with you how I build the bridge chart that goes along with the episode that you listen to. And we're going to use a story pyramid. Long ago, Gustav Freytag invented the story pyramid, sometimes called Freytag's pyramid, and he used it to map out the plot structure of plays that he saw acted out on stage. And the story pyramid has really endured because it shows the different components within a narrative and can be used to analyze text as well as to build up text for writing purposes. So we're going to actually do both with this lesson today. And as you know, in this lesson, we're using Caps for Sale. So many of you know this book from long, long ago. I'm pretty sure this book came out right around the time my parents were born. So it's been here a long time, but it's still an oldie but goodie and a classic one that kids love. So with the story pyramid, we're going to label it in 5 different ways. Now, Gustav Freytag labeled them a little bit differently, but I'm going to give you the more modern version of the different components of the pyramid. So for a narrative structure, first we're going to start with the lead, and I would actually sometimes label the pyramid with this language. For this lesson, I'm not going to do that because I just want to introduce students to the shape of it and get a sense of the structure. This would be how I would introduce students to the idea of a story pyramid to begin with. But if I were going to label it, I would call this a lead. This here is called the rising action. Here we have the climax, so obviously the tipping point, kind of like the top of the mountain. Here we have the falling action, and then at the bottom we have our conclusion. To introduce students to this structure, I like to actually use illustrations from the text. Now, I didn't provide them for you in the lesson because that would be violating copyright laws, but I suggest that you go ahead and either scan images from the book, or you can do what I did. I took my phone, I snapped a couple of photos, popped the images right into PowerPoint or another program like that and just printed them. So it's really easy. And once you've done it once and cropped them the way you like and sized them the way you like, you don't have to do it again. You can just laminate these and use these over and over with students. In the lesson that you downloaded, I show you exactly which pages you're going to need to scan or photograph to do the lesson. So I tell students that we're going to be retelling the story. And it's not a true retelling in the sense that we're adding every single detail and every single part of the plot. It's actually more of a summary. But at this point, I don't want to confuse students with that language because when I'm introducing the story pyramid, we haven't mastered summarizing yet. We're still in the retelling phase. So we start with different pictures, and I've already read the book to students and we acted it out. You could hear my daughter Natalie and I in the podcast making the noises and shaking and doing all those things that kids love to do with the book. Once we've done that, we take out our 6 pictures and we plot them together. Our first picture here is when the peddler is walking through the streets of the town. He's got his hat or caps on his head, and the story is just starting. So students work with me to determine, oh, yep, that's the beginning of the story. I may choose to use the word the lead of the story. In this case, I'll just say that's how the story begins. And then we're going to talk about the rising action. In this case, we have 2 events that are going to lead to our climax. Some stories have multiple events, 3 events, 4 events. Really simple stories may only have 1 event, like the stories maybe some of your students write. In this case, Caps for Sale, I've narrowed it down to 2 significant events. And the first one here, if I turn it right side up, is where he goes for a walk in the country and has a nap. And students know that he hasn't made any money that day. He can't buy lunch for himself, so he goes on this nice little journey alone in the country. Now, the next event after that, the significant part is when he wakes up. So this is definitely part of the rising action because we've gone from a simple problem, maybe a simple solution, and now all of a sudden we've escalated into a far more serious problem without a clear solution at this point. Students work with me to identify the next part. So when he realizes that his hats or his caps are in the tree and monkeys are wearing them. So this is definitely the climax of the story where the interaction between the peddler and the monkeys is so significant. Then we have to talk about the falling action section of the pyramid where we're going to have some type of solution or working towards a solution by the end of the story. And in this case, I just choose one picture where the peddler finally takes his cap out of frustration and throws it on the ground. And of course, all the monkeys do the same, as the kids know. And it leads to the final solution, which we put in the conclusion part of our pyramid, where he gets all of his caps back, he stacks them back on his head, and he walks back to town yelling caps for sale. So in a story pyramid like this, you can see we've mapped out using pictures and oral language support. Afterwards, I may work with students to actually retell and write a sentence or two explaining the different pictures that we mapped out. Most of the time though, I don't actually do that. I have students do that themselves. And in your lesson that you downloaded, there's a small version here of the story pyramid that you can hand out to students and have them map out the story and retell it as well. Now, one of the things that I like to do, as I mentioned earlier, when I've got those images from the text like these and I can resize them, you can make them nice and small and you can actually plot them on here and photocopy that. And then your students have a mini version of the one you did together in class. Or students can go ahead and illustrate their own images or just write on it. You can even number these events and just have them number it along their chart as well. One of the other things I like to do with this chart, sometimes kids find it hard to organize and write in the same area because it's not like a linear, binder paper or something like that. So a good thing to do is to give them small sticky notes and have them write their phrases or sentences on those and then easily plot them. And that way, if they make a mistake and something's in the wrong spot, which is inevitably going to happen, you can easily pick it up and move it, and the students aren't erasing and getting frustrated with that process. So those are some tips on how to use that story pyramid in small groups. It can also make a great literacy center where maybe you put in a listening center or students watch a video of a read aloud or they read a book on their own and they have to use the pyramid to map out the story that they read. Thank you so much for supporting LitCentric Radio, and I hope you have a great day at school.